Howdy, folks. It's your boy Max Moker going live for you here at Wake Up News from beautiful Alpine, Wyoming. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to everybody who shared my video yesterday. It's great to see thousands and thousands of people checking this out. I really appreciate all of you tuning in. As usual, we're going to look at the Jackson Hole Daily. Typical newspaper is 40 pages today, about 70% advertising, 20% fluff, 10% actual news. We're also going to look at some great stories I've got on my smartphone here today. As you saw, there's a headline that came out of the UPI today. Western male sperm counts are down 59.3% since 1973. I think that's pretty big news. Kind of disturbing. I want to know where our sperm went. But I'm going to start off today reading an excellent little excerpt from a sociology textbook written in 1942. Morning, Dave. Thanks for tuning in. Zach, what's up? We got 27 viewers. Show your support. Let me know where you're at in the comments. I'm going to get into this. Again, this book, sociology textbook, written in 1942. This is the second edition, published in 1949. A book by Kimball Young of Northwestern University. And we're going to go into chapter, I don't know what chapter it is, but it is Control and Change, Social Control. I'm going to read you a short excerpt here as we get going today. It is evident that whoever dominates the formation of beliefs and convictions may profoundly affect the changes in the law and the mores, or the morals of a society. Censorship and propaganda thus become the two most powerful weapons in social control in mass society, characterized as it is by specialization of work, impersonal relations, rapid transportation, and indirect communication over long distances, 1942. At their best, censorship and propaganda operate together. During World War I, the various governments censored certain news and deliberately manufactured other news in its place in order to keep up the morale at home and, if possible, to break it down among enemy nations. World War II was also marked by extensive propaganda and censorship as control devices. Okay, this is the second edition, published in 1949. Old sociology textbook. So right there, openly admitted how propaganda and censorship are used as control devices. Although in democratic capitalist societies, the moneyed groups often attempt to control the news and press interpretations, they seldom do so completely. But employers and employees alike have not hesitated to inflict upon the wider community propaganda directed to their own selfish aims. So too, even governmental agencies have begun to employ propaganda for their own ends. The present-day means of mass impression, in fact, are not entirely conducive to sound opinions. It is too easy for those in control to modify and qualify the statement of events or interpretations thereof. As a result, the ordinary citizen, like you and me, is at considerable loss to know what to think. This raises further serious questions for democracy. Under authoritarian systems generally, censorship and propaganda are a part of the whole educational and promotional program of the national state. These devices are highly important in securing public support. Wherever such complete control comes into operation, we cannot speak of public opinion in the sense of widespread and approved discussion and changing consensus. In such a system, all opinion once formed is, at least officially, preponderant opinion. There is no freedom of speech or of the press. Okay, nice excerpt from Sociology, A Study of Society and Culture by Kimball Young, Northwestern University, 1942, second edition, 1949. But it's important to note, even back here, in a democratic capitalist society, the money groups often attempt to control the news and press interpretation, and the government does too. If you've never had a chance to look at some old newspapers from World War II, you will be shocked at what it says in them. There's so much racist and blatantly propagandistic nonsense in these old newspapers. It really makes you wonder what we were really fighting for in World War II. Shannon Wendricks is saying we got some bad audio. Sorry about that. Maybe try closing out and coming back in, Shannon. So leading off with a little sociology today, you know, the opinion that the people in power manipulate the news is not anything new. It was written into the textbooks 70 years ago. Looking at the Jackson Hole Daily, as usual, 40 pages, give or take, 70% ads, 20% fluff, 10% news. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for the shares. Really appreciate that. Again, if I don't get your comments, if I don't see your comments, it's because a lot of the comments don't show up. I don't know why. It's very frustrating. So thanks for tuning in for Orlando there. I had somebody comment yesterday they don't want me doing all these shout outs. They want me to just get on with it. So I'm going to try to get on with it. But please show your support. Let us know where you're coming from and ask questions or correct me if I screw up on something. In the news, big news today here in Wyoming, we have a $400 million deficit in our education budget. That's out of a $1.5 billion education budget. And so that's a huge cut. You know, it's like 30% of the education budget. Up in Montana, they're dealing with some budget cuts too. I read an article today from Montana where they're looking at like a $65 million tax shortfall, but we're $400 million short on education in Wyoming, which is sad, right? Although arguably the kids learn a lot more from their smartphones and broadcasts like this than they do in school, perhaps. But to put that into perspective, Wyoming, the least populous state, that $400 million would translate into approximately $1,500 per taxpayer, right? So that's a lot of money. You know, it's sad here in Wyoming, we get a lot of our revenue from resource extraction, natural gas, coal, uranium, etc. And those things are going to the wayside. I think that we should probably, you know, what does Wyoming have? We got wind, no shortage of wind in Wyoming. We've got no shortage of sun, and we've got no shortage of high desert land that's pretty worthless for anything except drilling or developing renewable energy technologies, right? Wyoming could be covered with solar panels and wind turbines. Also, it's important to note that Wyoming is the home to the world's largest continental geothermal energy resource. Unfortunately, that has been inaccessible since 1872, when the federal government stole it and turned it into Jellystone National Park, home of Yogi Bear and countless hordes of tourists enjoying the elk and bison not in their natural habitat. Those animals never lived at that elevation. It's important to note as well that given Wyoming's high elevation, we're also in a prime location to make use of Tesla tech like Wardenclyffe Tower in order to access the gigantic battery of the upper ionosphere having a positive charge, the Earth having a relative negative charge. You can have a permanent lightning strike and generate as much electricity as you want for free indefinitely. Of course, that technology was shelved over 100 years ago because it rendered all fossil fuels obsolete. So Wyoming, let's get the kids through school, and maybe we should invest in technologies that don't destroy the planet and control the energy supply. Moving along. Oh, a bunch of fluffity duff in here. Vail announces zero net energy and other big goals. That's cool. Vail Resorts, not a very good ski resort in my opinion, not by a long shot. But at least they're trying to cut their energy use, cut their carbon footprint, although it's questionable whether CO2 is as big a villain as we are led to believe by the mainstream propagandists. So eloquently laid out in a sociology textbook from 1949. The opinion section, of course, is just more Trump bashing. They hate Trump in the media. You know, the more I read, it's shocking, especially in this newspaper. There's like probably at least half the news is stories about the Trump administration with really biased language, like really just slamming on the guy. And I don't know, it's hilarious. But, you know, a good example in the opinion section, Trump administration's best people aren't even average. Again, in my opinion, I think Trump's a distraction. But it's interesting to see how heavily they bash on this dude every day. Karen J. Bowden, what's up, Central PA? Thanks for tuning in. Brian Peterson, you're asking about flat Earth, bro. The Earth's round. If it was flat, there'd be an edge, right? Here's a flat thing. It has an edge. No one falls off the edge because it ain't flat. Onward, Trump administration. The hope that Trump might have access to a talent pool filled with figures who could bring new expertise and insights to government was always fanciful. He defines success in terms of money and demands absolute loyalty. He lacks any interest in policy and therefore sees no need for policy experts. His narcissism prevents him from getting those more knowledgeable and sophisticated than he to serve. Ouch, that's a burn. So he surrounds himself with his pampered children, fellow billionaires, and a hodgepodge of sycophants. And the replacements for them will likely be worse than the originals now that we all know what working in the Trump White House is all about, lawyering up, for one thing. Hence, you get the least competent administration in modern history. When you have the worst president in history, naturally you get the worst administration in history. So says Jennifer Rubin boldly in the Washington Post. Everybody loves bashing on Trump. You know, I wonder what would happen if Trump was a woman or if Trump was a minority, right? Again, I'm not a Trump supporter, but it's funny because what if Trump was gay, right? Could you bash on Trump if he was gay, or would it be a hate crime? Could you bash on Trump if he was a woman, or would it be sexism? Could you bash on Trump if he was a minority, or would it be racism? You know, because he's a white dude, it's okay. Just open season on Donnie Trump provides great distractions in the media. Again, Trump doesn't really have that much power. The hidden hand controls things behind the scenes. Moving along, California rebukes Trump, extends climate effort. Okay, the boys in California, Jerry Brown and Arnold Schwarzenegger, stood side by side Tuesday to cheer the extension of one of the most ambitious programs in the U.S. to reduce fossil fuel pollution while condemning President Trump's failure to see climate change as a deadly threat. There's some more of that language I'm, showcasing here. Schwarzenegger, Republican, joined Brown, a Democrat, for a sunny outdoor ceremony overlooking San Francisco, where the governor signed legislation to extend a program limiting emissions of climate-changing carbons. Within view of the city's skyscrapers on Treasure Island, a man-made low-lying island threatened by rising seas from climate change, the signing was full of open rebukes of Trump, who withdrew the United States from the Global Paris Accord to cut carbon emissions. Brown repeatedly evoked the darkest of scenarios Tuesday, calling the rapidly changing climate from the pollution of coal, gas, and other fossil fuels the second largest global threat. Okay, I wonder what Governor Brown of California considers the largest global threat. I wonder what it is. Me personally, I think we should get off fossil fuels. I think that they're obsolete. I think that they hinder humanity. They're artificially scarce, tied to the money supply, keep us all as slaves. But personally, I'm not that worried about CO2. I'm more concerned about radiation from Fukushima. I'm more concerned about pesticides. I'm more concerned about people all getting cancer and autism and ADHD and diabetes, early onset Alzheimer's. Did I say that already? All these legitimate, serious health impacts. Not too many people are going to die if the temperature rises a couple degrees, right? And if the weather goes crazy, I've been through some pretty crazy weather. People survived, okay? Now, if we're talking about crazy weather, I personally am more concerned about geoengineering, aka weather warfare, aka chemtrails, climate engineering, whatever you want to call it. It's rather apparent that these things are already taking place. Interestingly, today out of the UPI, we have an article, in addition to the one about men's sperm counts dropping. Scientists consider cloud brightening to slow global warming by Brooks Hayes, July 25th, 2017. To curb climate change, scientists at the University of Washington have proposed spraying aerosols over the ocean to encourage the formation of sun-reflecting marine clouds. Blah, blah, blah. We see this sort of propaganda all the time. These geoengineering technologies are only proposed as a solution to climate change, to mitigate climate change. And anybody who thinks that these technologies wouldn't be weaponized and used for power and profit is extremely naive. So, Moving on. We got a lot of questions. Shannon Wendrick's asking what's going on with Standing Rock now. I mean, I was out there at the end of February when they bulldozed the camp, and now they're not even letting people go out there. So, Standing Rock movement is still alive, but it's not super active. I got some friends who are out at camps in Massachusetts. There's camps in Iowa, South Dakota, but they're not getting much press coverage. And, the police, the governments have pretty effectively squashed, the original camps. God bless all the committed activists who are out there doing stuff, but there's not much going on. National and international news. We got more distracting, dividing, depressing stories. Trump bashing. Trump bashing. Trump bashing. Trump bashing. Mike captures Senator ripping Trump. So we got 5 Trump bashing stories right there on one page. Apparently, Mike Pence, they wheeled John McCain out with his brain cancer, and he cast a decisive yes vote, 51-50, with Vice President Mike Pence breaking the tie for Trump care to go through. I don't know. And again, the media always bashes on Trump care. It's hard to even make sense of the healthcare crisis in this country. But the mainstream consistently reports this statistic. The GOP would repeal Obamacare taxes and unwind an expansion of the Medicaid program for the poor, the disabled, and nursing home residents. The result would be 20 million to 30 million people losing insurance over a decade, depending on the version of the bill. Okay, that's the mainline news opinion on Trump care versus Obamacare. I'm not a supporter of Trump care. I'm not a supporter of Obamacare. I wish the government would just make healthcare more affordable without getting their paws all up in it. They could require that healthcare companies list their prices up front, so consumers like ourselves could decide where to go to get a procedure done. We would go where it's cheaper, just like if we're going to buy a car or a loaf of bread or a cocktail, we go to the place where it's the best deal, right? Simple stuff. It'd be very easy to rein in the insurance industry and the healthcare industry if the government was really serious about cutting the cost of healthcare for American citizens. Of course, it's important to note that here in the United States, healthcare is 18 to 19% of GDP. So if they reined in healthcare to levels more on par with the rest of the world, global average is about 9.9% spent on healthcare in developed countries. 9.9% of GDP is healthcare. So if they reined in healthcare by 8%, the U.S. economy would collapse. Think about that. Here we got your classic fear-mongering out of the mainstream report. North Korea intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuke capable next year. So watch out. Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il, whatever his name is going to blow you up next year. Watch out. Intelligence officials believe North Korea will have a reliable intercontinental missile capable of carrying a nuclear weapon as early as next year, according to a report published Tuesday, amid a warning from a top Republican lawmaker who says he has grown increasingly alarmed about Pyongyang's weapons program. The Washington Post reported that a new confidential assessment by the Defense Intelligence Agency trims 2 years off the timeline for when North Korea could strike North America cities with atomic weapons. The assessment was triggered by recent North Korean missile tests that indicated the nation's program was further along than expected. So watch out, guys. We thought the North Koreans were going to nuke us 3 years from now in 2020, but they might be doing it in 2018. I'd say if I was a betting man, I'd bet that North Korea is not going to launch nukes at American cities anytime soon. Probably not anything to worry about. But that's how the mainstream media works. Fear-mongering, fear-mongering, fear-mongering. Divisive, distracting, depressing, fear-mongering bullshit. Randall Pagancoop says, we're all going to die. No, I think we're going to be all right. Jack Hare chiming in, it's chemicals put in food and water causing a lot of problems. No doubt, Jack. I couldn't agree with you more. It's really disturbing. Okay? A little more Trump bashing here in the news in brief. Dozens of teen pregnancy prevention programs deemed ineffective by President Trump's administration will lose more than $200 million in funding following a surprise decision to end 5-year grants after only 3 years. The administration's assessment is in sharp contrast with that of the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which credited the program with contributing to an all-time low rate of teen pregnancies. Could have something to do with the falling male sperm counts as well. Rachel Fay of the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy said Tuesday that grantees under the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program were given no explanation when notified this month their awards will end next June. We know so little about the rationale behind cutting short these grants, said Frey, who said the teen birth rate has fallen by about 40% nationally. 40% nationally since the program went into effect in 2010. The Health and Human Services spokesman said late Tuesday that an evaluation of the first round of grants released last fall found only 4 of 37 programs studied showed lasting positive impacts. So we might have more teen pregnancy if this money is taken away. But I don't know. Just interesting. On to business. Trump is considering renominating Yellen for his second term as chair of the Federal Reserve, a private profit-driven banking cartel masquerading as a government agency. But he might also choose Gary Cohn, who leads his National Economic Council. So we'll see what happens. But what's going on in the stock market? Don't worry, guys. Your portfolio's safe for now. All-time record highs once again. Oil is up 3.3%. S&P 500 up 0.3%. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.5%. NASDAQ up 0.1%. The rise in yields, Treasury yields, the rise came as the Federal Reserve began a 2-day policy meeting on interest rates. The central bank has already raised rates 3 times since December, but few investors expect it to make another move when it's announced its decision today, Wednesday, July 26, 2017. It may not have shown on Tuesday, but many investors are bracing for markets to get shakier as the Federal Reserve moves further away from record low interest rates and big stimulus for the economy. How much big stimulus? Well, under the QE Infinity program, the Fed has been magically conjuring up and loaning into existence $85 billion a month since 2009. That's a lot of money. To put it into perspective, $85 billion a month is enough to gift 300 million Americans about $243 each per month. If they really wanted to stimulate the economy, they could just cut everybody a check for $200. See what happens. Nobody quit their jobs, but there sure would be a lot more jobs out there if everybody had an extra $200 a month to spend. Instead, $40 billion goes to fund deficit spending in the government, and about $45 billion goes to the big banks. They inject it into the stock market, and we see all-time record highs in the market, while the average American's just squeaking by. Sad. It may not have shown Tuesday, but investors are bracing for markets to get shakier as the Federal Reserve moves further away from record low interest rates and big stimulus for the economy. I already read that. Contrarians have also been concerned about how much the stock market has climbed and how smooth the ride has been. That's what happens when it's rigged, real smooth. As expectations have built up this year for corporate profit, there's a lot of hope built into the market at current levels, said Rob McIver, portfolio manager at the $6.3 billion Jensen Quality Growth Fund. We're cautioning investors to be cautious and conservative. All right, I think that's good advice. Any of you like me don't really believe in the stock market, don't really buy into the stock market, it's probably not a very good time to buy into the stock market. I'm not giving stock tips because I don't play that game. I think it's shady as fuck. I prefer working for a living. But interestingly, in the news today, we've got an excellent article on the Daily Reckoning. The elites are privately warning about a crash. Many everyday citizens assume powerful global financial elites operate behind closed doors in secret conclaves, like the scene of a Spectre board meeting in the recent James Bond film. Actually, the opposite is true. Most of what the power elite does is hidden in plain sight in speeches, seminars, webcasts, and technical papers. These are readily available from institutional websites and media channels. It's true that private meetings occur on the sidelines at Davos, the IMF annual meeting, and G20 summits of the kind just concluded, but the results of even those secret meetings are typically announced or leaked, or can be reasonably inferred based on subsequent policy coordination. What the elites rely on is not secrecy, but lack of proficiency by the media. They're not going to put it in, it's not going to be front page headlines on USA Today. Hey, everybody, the stock market's going to crash in 13 days. So prepare yourselves. The elites communicate in an intentionally boring style with lots of technical jargon and publish in channels non-experts have never heard of or are unlikely to find. In effect, the elites are communicating with each other in their own language and hoping that no one else notices. Still, there are some exceptions. Mohammed El-Arain is a bona fide member of the global power elite, a former deputy director of the IMF and president of the Harvard Management Company. Yet he writes in a fairly accessible style on the popular Bloomberg website. When El-Arain talks, we should all listen. So says this. In a recent article, he raises serious doubts about the sustainability of the bull market in stocks because of reduced liquidity resulting from simultaneous policy tightening by the Fed, European Central Bank, and Bank of England. He says stocks rose on a sea of liquidity, and they may crash when that liquidity is removed. This is a warning to other elites, but it's also a warning to you. Okay? So there you go. If the Fed says, or the European Central Bank, or the IMF, or any of these cocksuckers say, well, we got to tighten the belt, we got to turn off the nozzle of free money out there, it's a good time to start pulling your money out of stuff. We got a great article here from the Automatic Earth. Central banks are the crisis. Highly recommend that article. I've got another one up here too. Charles Hugh Smith. There's only one empire, finance, of two minds. That's a great article too. I'll put a link into the quotes later, or into the comments later. But moving on with the paper, I got a lot of stories up here on the phone today because it's a lot more informative than this newspaper. Moving along. Chipotle says its sales rose in the second quarter as it worked on recovering from past food scares. The Denver-based company said sales rose 8% at established locations for the 3 months that ended June 30th, following a 24% drop in the year-ago period. The improved results in the most recent quarter do not reflect any potential fallout from this month, when Chipotle temporarily closed a store in Virginia, prompted by what health officials believe was a norovirus outbreak. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Chipotle shares have dropped roughly 8% since the beginning of the year, while the S&P 500 has risen 11%. In the final minutes of trading on Tuesday, shares hit 348.40, a decline of 21% in the last 12 months. They rose 2.6% in extended trading. Okay, Chipotle, of all the fast food restaurants, Chipotle is arguably the healthiest one, right? You go in there, they got organic veggies, they got good meat that's not raised with a bunch of hormones and shit. And so we always see Chipotle getting bashed on. How many people get sick from eating at McDonald's? How many people get sick from eating at Taco Bell? How many people get sick from eating at Pizza Hut or Burger King or wherever the fuck else? But Chipotle, anytime somebody gets sick at a Chipotle, it becomes national news. And I ask you, why is that? Maybe it's because it's healthy and it's affordable to the masses. Daily horoscope, getting into it. 4-star day. I don't follow the occult. I don't follow astrology, but I do read my horoscope just because it's fun. Tap into the depth of a conversation between you and someone else. I think that's me and you, Zachary Coons. Let's get it going. Address a lack of clarity that is keeping you from coming to a resolution. Be sure to get some exercise today, as your temper might be closer to the surface than you are aware. Tonight, add some mischief. All right, then. I'm going to go surfing for a bike ride after making this video, and I'm going to a fun little dinner party barbecue tonight. So I think the stars have aligned for me here today in Alpine, Wyoming. What do we got? You know, here's a classic not story. Also divides us based on sex, gender. New Hampshire camp sparks firewoman. It's a half page about a bunch of ladies learning basic firefighting skills in New Hampshire. Of course, this camp is only open to women, not men. So it divides us based on sex and gender. And I don't know, it's not news to me. It's like, big deal. Big deal. Couple people learned firefighting skills in New Hampshire. Nobody gives a shit. What else do we got? The weather. It's going to be nice out here in Wyoming. And then we're right into the fluff sections. We got ads and ads and ads for stores and restaurants. Get yourself some fine Persian rugs, all that jazz. Here's actually kind of a fun story. A New Hampshire city has turned to a herd of hungry goats to tame the vegetation at its closed landfill. The Public Works Department in Keene said Monday it brought in 30 goats in June to munch on the grass and shrubs at the fenced-in landfill. I don't think I want any milk from those goats anytime soon, considering that they're eating off the top of a landfill. They're joined by Enzo, a dog tasked with protecting the goats from potential predators. Assistant Public Works Director Duncan Watson said the goats are working out so far, although he estimates the city probably will need up to 100 goats to maintain the entire 20-acre site. At $300 a month, the goats are a bargain. Okay? It would be cool if we could all mow our lawn with goats, right? Even here in Alpine, Wyoming, which we lovingly refer to as Freedom Town or the Man Camp, I'm not allowed to have goats in my yard. I'd love to fence this little piece of property in and have a goat or two out there mowing my lawn for me, go out there and milk them every morning, have a great old time with it, check on the chicken coop, get some eggs, but I'm not allowed to have goats or chickens in my yard, and that's sad. Be cool if we could relocalize agriculture. Sports. We actually have some news in sports today. Again, sports, the biggest distraction, the biggest bread and circuses imaginable. Research on 202 former football players found evidence of a brain disease linked to repeated head blows in nearly all of them. What's it called? I forget. CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Okay, so all these football players, boxers, turns out that banging your head into other people's heads for a living is hard on your head, hard on your brain. I actually have a friend who played 11 seasons in the NFL, and I was hanging out with him down in Mexico right after he retired, and he was having some trouble because he was one of the most aggressive offensive linemen in the game, and he got his bell rung many, many times. So maybe it's time that we as a civilization move away from the gladiatorial games as a diversion. If you think that football is bad for your brain and boxing's bad for your brain, I bet you that bare knuckle cage fighting is also bad for your brain. And at a time when we're seeing all this disturbing information about people's brains getting all messed up from football, why are we encouraging children to become cage fighters? There's a TV network called Fuel TV. They used to be all about skateboarding and snowboarding and dirt bikes and extreme sports, which are arguably a pretty dumb thing to teach kids to do anyway, but it's good for healthcare, right? You get everybody to break themselves, it's great for the economy. Turn everybody into a bunch of adrenaline junkies. They're very easily manipulated. But now Fuel TV is all about cage fighting. You go on Fuel TV, it's basically 24/7 coverage of people beating the crap out of each other. And it's marketed to the kids. Sad. Into classifieds, we got your TV listings. Don't worry, guys. There's plenty of TV out there to distract you from what's really going on. So enjoy your TVs, please. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of classified ads trying to get people to work for 10, 15, 20 bucks an hour. At the same time, there's no place to live. There's only a couple rooms for rent, and the cheapest one within 15 miles of Jackson Hole is $1,000. So if you're making 15 bucks an hour, you're going to have to work quite a bit just to pay the rent, let alone utilities, healthcare, maybe a little food. Probably should eat something once in a while. And then whatever's left over, spend it on Persian rugs. But that's your news today. Let's see what else is going on. Oh, it's in my my headline there today, the sperm count thing. This is disturbing. Okay, this is really disturbing. This is coming from the UPI too, so you know it's factually accurate. A recent study shows male sperm count declining significantly in Western countries. Researchers from Hebrew University have found that sperm concentration and total sperm count has significantly and steadily declined in Western men. The study, published July 25th in Human Reproduction Update, was conducted by Hebrew University blah 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 School of Public Health and Community Medicine at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Researchers reviewed so this is a metadata analysis where they looked at 7,500 studies and conducted meta-regression analysis on 185 studies between 1973 and 2011. So this is actually old news too, to find a 52.4% decline in sperm concentration and a 59.3% decline in total sperm count in men from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Damn. Researchers did not see significant decline in sperm count in men from South America, Asia, or Africa. Given the importance of sperm counts for male fertility and human health, this study is an urgent wake-up call for researchers and health authorities around the world to investigate the causes of the sharp, ongoing drop in sperm count with the goal of prevention. Blah, blah, blah. So that's pretty disturbing. You know, we're living through a global depopulation agenda. You know, I personally would like to have 100% of my sperm to do with as I see fit. But if I'm normal in America, I've lost 59% already, at least, compared to 1973 levels. And again, that's a statistic from 2011. You know, looking at studies from 2011, so I wonder if it's dropped even more since then. What happens when the last sperm dies on planet Earth? Think about that. What else is going on? A former CIA director calls for a coup if Trump fires Mueller. This is coming from Zero Hedge. In the most vocal opposition to President Donald Trump yet, former CIA director John Brennan said that if the White House tries to fire special counsel Robert Mueller, government officials should refuse to follow the president's order, as they would be, in his view, inconsistent with the duties of the executive branch. Okay, so that's interesting. We already covered cloud brightening. Here's a disturbing story. There's a CEO, this is published in CNBC, the CEO of a company in Wisconsin called 3 Square Market is getting all of its employees chipped. They're putting the little microchip between the thumb and the forefinger, the proverbial mark of the beast. You know, without the chip, you cannot survive in civilization. Forget swiping a credit card or badge to buy food at work. One Wisconsin-based tech firm is offering to install rice-sized microchips in its employees' hands. 3 Square Market will be the first firm in the U.S. to use the device, which was approved by the FDA in 2004. CEO Todd Westby told CNBC on Monday, "We think it's the right thing to do for advancing innovation, just like the driverless car basically did in recent months," he said in an interview with Closing Bell. Okay, so there's your microchipping. Interestingly, think about it. If everybody's got a microchip in their hand, well, you could be tracked with RFID. And if we go into a cashless society where you just walk up to the register and put your hand out there and it scans your purchases, there's nothing secret anymore. It's very disturbing. And then we got a great article from the Anti-Media that came out today. Come on, Anti-Media, stop spamming me. That just says banks scheming to control a cashless society. It's important to note, every time you use a credit card to pay for something, the bank gets a cut, right? I don't know what the fees are these days, but I know a lot of people like a lot of businesses, for example, food trucks, won't accept credit cards because they might lose 2-3% of the transaction right off the top. And if you got let's say you got a 10% margin on your business, where you spend $9 but you make 10, losing 2-3% of that's a big hit, right? And the banks, what do? They just provide the means to pay. So a cashless society, extremely disturbing. The microchipping of people, also disturbing. So a good article at the Anti-Media today, banks are scheming to dominate a future cashless society. That's the budget cuts. From Australia, prescription opioids are killing more Australians than heroin, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. That's coming from The Age. It's a paper in Australia. So sad to see that. They have similar experiences to us here in America. If you got any friends who are going into painkillers, help them get off them. Opium, heroin, opioid painkillers, extremely destructive thing in our society. Of course, who controls all the opioids? Well, the pharmaceutical companies. Now they're making synthetic opioids, but the good stuff is the natural stuff, right? Well, it's not good. I'm just being sarcastic. Where does the natural stuff come from? 90% grown in Afghanistan. Who controls Afghanistan? Uncle Sam. Why are we in Afghanistan? To control the global opium market, in addition to other key strategic things like oil pipelines, resource extraction. They got a lot of rare earth metals like lithium, which are rather convenient in the modern world in Afghanistan. So Uncle Sam snatched it up. It's funny, the U.S., I've got an old National Geographic. I got a lot of old National Geographics. This isn't the one, but I've got one from like the 60s, early 60s, and they're bragging about, who is it, Brown and Root, who became Halliburton, are bragging about the network of roads and canals they built in Afghanistan to bolster agriculture for the Afghanis. The ad fails to mention that it's because they're growing opium there. Okay. In 2000, the Taliban that we put in power in Afghanistan decided they didn't want to grow our opium anymore, so they made it illegal. They burned all the fields. Afghanistan went from producing 90% of the world's opium to about 10% in 1 year. What did the U.S. do in response? Well, we invaded, and we took over. NSA officials and computer experts. Forensic evidence proves that the Democratic National Committee emails were leaked, not hacked. This is on Washington's blog. It's from the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, the VIPs. Subject: was the Russian hack an inside job? Forensic studies of Russian hacking into Democratic National Committee computers last year reveal that on July 5th, 2016, data was leaked, not hacked, by a person with physical access to DNC computers and then doctored to incriminate Russia. So, I'm not supporting Trump by saying that, but that's what these guys, and there's a list of like 20 retired CIA and FBI agents that signed off on that one. What else? U.S. home sales tumble as prices hit record highs. This is coming from Reuters. U.S. home resales fell more than expected in June as a dearth of properties amid strong demand pushed prices to a record high, keeping first-time buyers on the sidelines. Okay, who owns all these houses? There are a lot of empty houses in America. A lot of them are bank-owned. A lot of them are owned by international investors. I forget the statistic, but it was kicking around the internet a few years ago where there's like 7 houses per officially homeless person in the United States. Right? A lot of empty houses out there. But what's the solution? Well, what does Reuters say? We got to build more houses. Boost the economy. Let's build more empty houses, and then we'll sell them at all-time record highs. It's important to note when they say record high here, that doesn't actually mean all-time record highs, but adjusted for inflation, it is true. In 2007, 2008, the prices were higher, but inflation. Ouch. And the last story for the day from the UPI, learning to lie comes easy to psychopaths. New research suggests people with psychopathic traits aren't innately better liars, but they are better at learning to lie. Okay, we got a lot of psychopaths in government. We got a lot of psychopaths in the media. We got a lot of psychopaths in Hollywood. We got a lot of psychopaths in high finance. The list goes on and on. Interestingly, today there was an article in here that I missed about a priest in Boston, I think. Doesn't matter, but long story short, in the Jacksonville Daily, at least, we often see stories about pedophilia within the Catholic Church. Now, when I was in college, I had the distinct displeasure of wiping the asses of a bunch of convicted pederasts while I was working as a nurse's assistant. So I've experienced the sexual abusers of the Catholic Church firsthand, but I wonder why the mainstream media always goes after the pederasts, the pedophiles, the creeps in the church, but never goes after the ones in government, high finance, and Hollywood. You know, it's rampant throughout the power structure. But what do? They only focus on the dirty priests, when in reality, there are a lot of powerful people who get off on disturbing shit. So, that's it for today. Once again, Sociology, A Study of Society and Culture by Kimball Young, 1949. All the way back then, they were well aware of the power of propaganda and censorship. It was written into the textbooks. And if you think I'm a conspiracy theorist, nah, man, I'm just reading sociology textbooks written 70 years ago. It's all crystal clear, plain as day. Thank you all for tuning in. I haven't seen a comment. I've got 54 viewers, but I haven't seen a comment from anybody in like 20 minutes. I don't know if it's because it's just not showing up or what, but I thank you all for tuning in and certainly appreciate all of you. Remember, it's important to not let the mainstream media get us down. Okay, it's designed to depress us. It's designed to distract us. It's designed to deter us from following our life's purpose. It's designed to make us miserable. That's the goal. It's designed to make us controllable. The power of propaganda. So the best thing you can do is, yeah, stay aware, but laugh at it. You know, call it out for what it is, and don't let it get you down. Remember, stay active, take care of yourself, take care of the people you love, and spend more time focusing on things you can actually change and control than things that are totally outside your control. Me, I'm going surfing. I'm going for a bike ride. I'm going to work on my new book a little bit, and then I'm going to enjoy the newfound freedom of not being employed in a slave job anymore. Pretty stoked on that. See how long it lasts, see if I can make it last. And then I'm going to a barbecue with some friends. So I'm hoping to have a good day, and I hope you do too. Thank you all for tuning in. This is Max Mogan signing off for Wake Up News. One love. Peace.